Hi, hi, hi. Hello, everybody. Happy Thursday. Let's just check that all our tech is working, and I'm excited to get going. Thursday. Yeah, we've got sound, all going well. Amazing, amazing, amazing. So I am so excited to have you with us here today. If you're watching live or you're watching on the replay, a lot of people said they were watching on the replay because this is like 2 o'clock in the afternoon, Eastern time in Toronto, where I am, and most people are, trying to get their life balance right. And at the moment, they're at work. So hello and welcome to the Wonder Why Reshape Lunch and Learn series. As peri and menopausal women, our lives are particularly stressful, right? Many of us are burning the candle at both ends. I know I certainly am. And so the idea of work-life balance, however elusive, may be something that we think about or try to achieve, or it's always at the back of our heads. But many of us are looking after kids or grandkids. No matter how old the kids, they always need us, right? They say big kids, big problems. We're also caring for elderly parents and relatives. We're working on keeping our marriages and relationships fresh. We're expected to prioritize our mental, emotional, and physical health. Of course, on top of all of this, we're expected to stay on top of our business, career, or work, and all this in the context of an ageist society, all right? They don't call us the sandwich generation for nothing. There is a lot going on. So to do this all successfully, we've been giving this message over the years that we should be striving for some kind of work-life balance. So let me know in the comments if that work-life balance is working for you. Give me a thumbs up if it is, or a thumbs down if it isn't. For me, it's definitely a thumbs down, definitely a not so much. Okay, so this is why we have today feminist business coach Maryann Lombardi is here to talk to us about why work-life balance idea is a lie and what we should be doing instead to live a life that is joyful and aligned with our true purpose. So welcome to the Wonder Why Lunch and Learn series for success-minded perimenopausal and menopausal women who want to look better, feel better, and age audaciously. And if you're wondering why it's called Wonder Why, well, this menopausal phase is our third age. Our bodies and brains are literally being reshaped and rewired in response to hormonal changes, okay? And this may result in nagging pains, achy and tight bodies, and figure changes that may have you feeling that it's all downhill from here. Now, we can spend the next 30 plus years wondering what the heck has happened to our bodies and what we're meant to do about it. Or we can take charge of our change and make our third age the most wonderful yet. So if you're the take charge type, then I am here to show you how to do that. I'm your host, Tracy Sider, CEO of Third Age Wonder Inc., Tracy Sider Coaching, and creator of the Reshape Method program, where I help solution-focused peri and menopausal women who are probably stuck behind screens all day get a strong, agile, pain-free body to match their strong, agile, youthful minds so they can crush their next phase life and work goals. I'm also the host of the Peri, and that's an ampersand, Menopause Movement Facebook Club group. So come and join us there if you are not already a member. And without much further ado, I am thrilled to have with us today feminist business coach Maryann Lombardi. Let's bring her onto the screen. While my focus is all about biomechanical and physical alignment of the body, Marianne deals with a different kind of alignment. Marianne helps women and non-binary entrepreneurs to ditch the work-life balance battle and take bold action to build a profitable business that aligns with the life they want to live, building wealth and independence in the process. So Marianne, thank you so much for coming to talk to us about the myth of work-life balance. Already just that makes me feel better. So hand over to you.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. Thank you so much, Tracy, for having me. And after, like, I'm with you on everything you just said. Like, sign me up, man. Third age, body strong, beautiful. Like, let's beat down the age of society and go rule the world.
For sure. Yeah.
It's like, I love it. I love it. Yeah. So as you said, I'm a business coach, and I do work from a feminist perspective, which is really all about thinking about the work that we do from a business and life perspective through the context of feminism, meaning that there is an entire history and social conditioning that has been there, that is true, right, and has an impact on how women feel about themselves and what they feel is possible, and quite honestly what the world expects of them and what they think they should do. And I think that often that context plays a big role in how we think about what our next steps should be, right? And so we look at that.
Yeah, and it's insidious. We don't even realize it, right? I mean, an example of that is just hair and going gray. Like, I'm letting my grays just grow. And there's a recent event that happened in Toronto where the news anchor, who's been the news anchor of the big, nightly news for 30 years, her contract was not renewed after she decided to stop coloring her hair. So it's just small things like that like have you wondering, which I think spills into so many different aspects of life.
Right. And it's deep, right? Like, it's deep and long. Like, this stuff, it starts when you're like 5 years old, and and if you've been told to be seen and not heard for most of your young life, right, it has an impact on whether or not you think you should speak your voice. So we take that into consideration when we're helping clients really build the kind of businesses that they want to build, and in many ways opting out of the structures and systems that cause some of these problems, because so many of our clients are jumping out of corporate, or they are trying to build a second business that really aligns with the kind of life that they choose to live, not a life that they're told to live, not a life that was structured for them to live, but a life that is really their choice. And in many ways, that's a radical thing, right? Like, it's a radical act for a woman to step out and be like, you know what? No, I opt out of this and I'm going to do this. So I'm all for that. And we're here to help them get it done.
Fantastic. I love that. I love that. So tell us why the work-life balance is a crock.
Yeah, well, first of all, there's only life. Right.
Yeah.
There is just life. And the idea that work and life are in some sort of teeter-totter with each other is absurd, because we have a life, and work's job is to support that life. It is not in this sort of equal pattern. So that's one of the challenges and one of the problems. The second one is that women's labor is never done. Right. The math doesn't work. Right. Because as a woman, you do your paid shift. You go home and you do your unpaid shift, then you do your night shift, and then you do your care shift during your night shift. And then, right. So this idea that there could be a balance between labor and leisure, or those kind of things, it's just not humanly, mathematically possible, because there is no such time available in the day for that. So putting women in a position where they have to think about balancing those two things is absolutely absurd. So usually what we try to get our clients to really think about is, what do you want, right? There's just a life. So figuring out what that life is that you want, once you figure that out and you understand that, you look at, where is your life right now? Where is that life that you want? And what's the gap in between? And how do we reconcile the gap that's in between that, step by step by step? So this life that you have gets closer and closer and closer to the life that you want. So it isn't about bartering between life and leisure, or any of, or work and life of that kind. It's about, what is the life you have? What do you want? How do you move what you have to what you want closer? And the other thing to keep in mind is that this idea of work-life balance started as this work-leisure balance. And this was back in the day, I think maybe in the 50s or so. And it was really directed at men, right? It was directed at men to spend more time on leisure activities, which is, going golf or going to, right? It was never meant to actually support women. Right. So it hasn't really worn well over time to be inclusive of the way women work.
Right. There is no off. I mean, as I ran down from my office down to my studio to get set up for our interview, don't think I wasn't taking the stuff out the washing machine and putting it in the dryer.
Right. Because and I think it's important to think about labor, right? Like I think often, when we talk about this, what people are talking about is paid labor, right? But for women, paid labor is just one piece of their labor in general, right? And if they don't have a solid communication with partners that help them with the unpaid labor part of it, their labor is never ending.
So what kind of advice do you give to people, and what do you find they kind of struggle with the most?
Yeah, well, I think the thing that at least my clients in my experience struggle with the most is when they figure out what they want and they really identify where they are and they see the gap between those two things, it feels insurmountable. So often, we're doing really well when we try to really audit where we are, like what's working, right? What do we like? What do we love? What do we dislike? Where do we feel joy and empowerment? And where do we feel the opposites of those kind of things, right? And we can do that audit of where we are. And then we dream. And dreaming is great. We can vision and we can dream and we do that. But then when we sit those two things next to each other, often what happens is this like, oh shit, right? Because there's this big gap between it. And so there's this feeling of overwhelm of like, I'm never going to be able to get there, right? Like I can't do that because they think that they have to blow up everything in order to get to this spot. And so that's usually the biggest hurdle we have at the beginning, because the audit in some ways is fun, right? It's fun to dissect a little bit of that and it's fun to dream, but doing the work isn't always fun.
Yeah.
So that's usually one of the biggest.
Yeah. So what would that audit look like, for example? What kind of things should people be writing down and looking at to start creating the framework for where it is you're going to take us, right?
Yeah. Well, usually one of the first things that we have folks do is to mark their day. What that means is that they go through their day and they pick 5 to 7 moments during the day that they're going to stop and take note. Right. And we choose them ahead of time, because if they don't choose them ahead of time, it's really hard to get them to stop. But for instance, when they wake up in the morning, somewhere around lunch, sometimes midday, sometime after work, and sometime in the evening, and where they're going to stop and they're going to assess how's the day going so far. Right. And they have to answer 3 questions. They have to answer what brought me joy, what was painful, right? And what did I not really care about? So it's like the extremes in the middle. And they do that for a good 2 weeks. And that's usually the first step that we have with our clients to take stock of where they are, is to start auditing that. And what happens is that it brings up all these other questions. And so they start writing down these questions. And so every time we get back together, we're looking at all these questions that have come up, because they're going, God, this was painful. Some of it's emotional pain, some of it's mental pain, some of it's physical pain, some of it's right. And they'll start noticing all of the pain they're in. And so we'll start asking questions about that. Well, what do we think caused that pain? And so we do that audit process, and then we just let it go. We just leave it and we go into the dreaming. And the dreaming is a blast, right? Because the dreaming is all about, like, where do you want to wake up in the morning? And this isn't about your family. This is just about you. Just nobody else is around. Like, where do you want to wake up in the morning? How do you want to feel when you wake up in the morning? What does it taste like there? What does it smell like? What are the sounds like? What do you do first thing in the morning? Like, we walk them through this narrative. It's almost like a meditation, but we walk them all these questions about them imagining what it looks like to live in this place that they're at, and it's sensory, right? And then we ask those same questions about where they are, and they go, what does it feel like to wake up in the morning? What does it sound like? What, right? And we do that process. And by the time we've done that, usually it's very clear what they want and where they are. And all of this is super important in figuring out where they want to go and how they want to build that business. Absolutely.
So what is the first, so the work-life balance is a lie. Completely get that. There's no such thing. How would you say we should be reframing that concept? Because really it's just about managing our day and managing our lives, right? In a way that gets us closer to joy and the things that we want. So what should we be doing instead of trying to find balance?
Yeah, well, I think first and foremost, we need to be looking where the pain points are in our life, and we need to see what we can do about those, right? That's like, if we need to take this one step at a time. So if you look at your day and you go, well, what are my pain points? What are the things that really cause me strain and strife and stress, and make it so I'm not focused, make it so I'm not listening to my children when I'm with them, make it so I'm not available, for myself in any way, shape, or form. Like, what are those stress points? So one very common stress point is things like the shared labor at home, whether that's with a partner, whether that is like you live by yourself, there's still a lot of labor to do at home, whether it's with children, right? This is a stressor. And so we mark all of the different stressors that they have, and we go, let's just talk about each one. How can you just gain a little bit of time and share a little bit of that home duty? How do we do that? How do we have conversations with our partners and our kids, or find somebody to help us, like come in and help us? How do we start having conversations with those individuals in order to see where there's room to help alleviate that pain? And we work on that one pain, and then we move to another pain. So for example, if one of the pains that you have is that you have like 15 meetings a week where you do absolutely nothing, right? And they're all like 40 minutes too long. Because in my mind, a 20-minute meeting is perfect, right? Like we don't need an hour meeting.
Yeah.
Right? Out of all those meetings that are taking up your time, how many do you control? Right? If you control those meetings, could you take that 40 minutes away and only have a 20-minute meeting? Is that possible? So we start looking at what are the pain points and what are the stressors, and attack each one very directly. Because I think when we look at it broadly, like one big swath of how am I ever going to accomplish this, it's overwhelming, right? But if we just go day by day and we pick what those pain points are, we start to unravel them. And then it gets easier to unravel for yourself, right? You start noticing, you start getting good at building boundaries, you start feeling relief and all of that kind of stuff. And so you just unravel things day by day. The other thing that we do is we try to get folks to stop thinking about self-care as a solution, because self-care is not a solution to work-life balance. And often it is presented of, well, just go work out more, or just go have more massages, or just go take a bubble bath. And often what that does is it makes women feel like they have to put more on their plate, right? And, these one-off situations don't actually help. If you're still in a position where you're feeling that burnout, you're numb from all the stuff you have to do, you're cranky, getting a massage when you're cranky is not incredibly useful. So we try to separate out this idea of self-care from it being some solution to work-life balance. Self-care is important, but it is not the solution to work-life balance. It's disentangling all of the things that add extra stress onto your life and managing your labor issues. That is where the solution lies. Self-care is something that you should be doing in the mix of it, but the burden of that as your solution to self-care is way too much.
Yeah. And do you find the biggest thing is that women just need more help? They need more help, they need more resources, they need to think about where certain things can maybe be outsourced. Well, do you think that we're just taking on too much? Because it's just, if you keep saying yes, people are going to keep giving you things to do.
Yeah. My sense is that it's not that women need more help, even though, yes, they do. But what is more useful is to not get into the position where they're doing so much in the first place. Right. So some of that is about the no factor, right? Like no is a really uncomfortable thing to do, and to understand that. And part of that is about boundaries, and part of that is really understanding what you are capable of and what you're not capable of. Some of it is really understanding what you should and don't want to do, right? So the no is really important. But often when women go out and try to get more help, all that does is it keeps the load on top of them, right?
Right.
And when something gets taken off, something else gets added on, right? So it really, yes, it's great to get somebody to come in and maybe help with, housework sometimes, or having somebody come in and help with meals sometimes, or that kind of stuff. But it's better to really look at how much are you taking on in the first place? because it's like the symptom versus the Band-Aid versus, right.
What
like
are you saying yes to that you should maybe be saying no to, but feel bad if you say no, right?
Right. Yeah, but I think we always have to think about the cost benefit analysis of what we're doing, right? Because like, what does it cost you to do all of this stuff versus what is the benefit of you doing it all? You doing 15 extra things, sort of who does that benefit? Like, who gets the benefit out of that? What does it cost you to do that? And which is more?
Right.
If you take on like organizing all 15 of the PTA meetings, what would happen if you only organized 5? Right. Would the world end if you organized 5? But something is leading you to say you will organize 15. What are you getting out of that? Like why do you choose to take that on? Is it there a power thing, right? Is there like wanting to feel important? Is there like, what is it getting at that you say yes to that? But if you can figure that out and learn how to say yes to 5 and not 15, it's amazing what that opens up for you.
Yeah, I hear you. That's about just really being mindful of what you want and filling that gap of where you are now and where you want to go in a way that is going to be beneficial to you, and your whole family and all the people around you, because nobody benefits when you are run ragged.
Well, right. And we do the same thing with businesses, right? I mean, often we get into the conversation about how we manage our life, but all of this, it applies to how you manage your business, because it's the same thing. It's that same process of being, here's where my business is. This is where my business is going. I know what I want. I know where I'm going to, and I have to do step by step to get me up to that point of where I am. But to do that, I need to have a strong mind. I need to have a clear mind. I need to have a strong body, right? In order to stay focused on getting from where I am to where I want to be, piece by piece by piece by piece.
I love that. And at the end of the day, it's, I hear what you're saying. I've recently read the book, The One Thing, right? And that is my overriding principle. I love it. You think about what you can do that will make other things easier or unnecessary. Is that a kind of philosophy that you stick behind as well?
Well, I think absolutely, because, and it goes back to the why and the what you want part, because that is in essence is similar to the idea of your one thing. Because if you measure based on, does this action get me to that one thing? Does it get me to what I want, to the goal? And if the answer is yes, let's do it. Let's move forward with that. But if the answer is absolutely not, but for some reason it's making me want to do it or whatever, we stop and we hold on to it and we put it aside and we go, let's come back to that, right? Because if you can definitely see that thing doesn't get you to that one thing, it doesn't get you to that goal, then why are you putting an enormous amount of energy in there, right? Maybe we need to put it off to the side. So always being able to measure what you're doing based on where you're going helps tremendously in sort of centering you and like keeping you clear and on track to where you're going.
Yeah. And where you're going then is probably that's the key thing, right? How often do we stop and actually do an audit, as you were saying, of where we are now and where we want to go?
Yeah,
so we stated that is the most important thing. That is the first step, to actually define where it is you want to go.
Yeah, and there's it's like once you start doing that, it gets more comfortable, right? Like you get used to this self-reflection process where you stop and you go, I'm feeling a little ragged. I'm feeling like I'm going 15 directions. Maybe I should step back and do another audit, right? And see if, here's where I am. Am I where I want to go yet? Have I moved? Like, at least if I'm moving forward to that, then there's progress. But if I'm still stuck where I was or going backwards, I'm going to have to rethink things, So those audits are really important, but it does require you to stop a minute. And a lot of times women don't take the time to do that, to really opt out and say, you know what, I need a minute to do some of this work.
It's that time to reflect, right? Giving ourselves time to reflect. So, so to end off then, what advice would you give to people to start getting in the habit of taking the time to reflect? so that you can redirect?
Yeah. The first thing I would suggest folks to do is to start doing that like 5 times a day work, where you pick 5 moments in the day and you ask yourself, what is thrilling me or bringing me joy, whatever word you like, right? What is causing me pain, and what am I indifferent about, right? Sort of I'm just indifferent. I don't have a strong feeling one way or the other. And mark that throughout your day at least 5 times. Just stop and think about it and write it down. And don't judge it, or don't even look at it until you've done it for 2 weeks. And then go back and look at it and see what you learn. But that's the first thing I would suggest. And if it's hard to do it for 2 weeks, that's fine. Just do it once a day, right? But just taking a second to ask yourself those 3 questions: what brought me joy or thrilled me? What caused me pain? And what am I indifferent about?
Yeah.
Yep.
Fantastic. Yeah, I'm going to start doing that for sure, because there's never going to be balance, right? Because everything is right. You've got to find within that what is working for you and bringing you closer to your goals. And that requires the first step of actually setting some goals.
Right. And there'll be seasons in your life, right? Like there'll be seasons where maybe you're doing a lot more work, and seasons where there's a lot more free time and family. And there's this ebb and flow throughout your life. But if you're very clear where you're going and where you are and how to get there, you won't feel the kind of strain that you do in trying to build this work-life balance.
I love that. Thank you so much. So tell us, Marianne, for people who would like to be in touch with you and work with you, how can they get hold of you?
Oh, absolutely. So find me on LinkedIn. It's just my name, Maryann Lombardi. You will find me. I am there. I am everywhere. So just connect with me on LinkedIn, DM me, tell me that we met or saw you through Tracy, and I'll be thrilled to, get to know you. Also, I have a workshop, a masterclass coming up in a couple of weeks, all about money. It's all about mastering money. So it's like ditching the mindset traps, ditching the doubt that comes with dealing with money, and then doubling your sales, figuring out how, when you ditch that doubt, how you can channel that into a profit plan that doubles your sales. So we're going to be talking mindset, profit plan, and sales. So we're going to get you ready to really double that sales in the next 90 days.
Awesome. I will be there for sure. Thank you so much for coming to chat with us. This was really, really helpful. Some great practical tips. I love that. And hopefully you can come back and speak to us again, maybe about money.
Would love to. Thank you so much.
We've all got money issues and money doubts for sure. Fantastic. Have a wonderful